Okay. And we are recording. And hello, everybody. This is Daniel Martin Peixe again. And this stream was something that I wanted to do after I finished the animation of the Dia de los Muertos. I started to test all the new features with Quill 2.7. Hello, everybody. And I was really excited to work on that piece because I wanted to test really like the workflow of stop motion animation, no? Like a really like you feel like you have a puppet in front of you. And this time, so I guess you already Agoro already covered a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. He talked about how to build a character and how to set it up, right? But just in case, I'm just going to show you quickly what I have here on my layer setup. Everybody can hear me okay? Everything's working okay? Yes?
Oh, perfect.
Good.
Yeah.
So this is the main father folder, right? In this folder, I set up one layer that is just a paint layer called master, which is basically this little circle. This allows me to in any time grab this circle and move the whole character around, which is kind of cool.
It's
Um,
like a root
it's
controller.
it's yeah, I'm trying to emulate my Maya environment sometimes. Anyway, torso, it's where everything begins, right? Torso is inside of torso is this the hips, obviously. And if I grab the hips, I'm gonna pick up all the character. But notice that the master node is still there. That's because the legs are inside that torso folder, right? Right leg, left leg. So if so when I move the hips, the legs are gonna go with it, which is great. Uh, Inside of the torso, I have the rib cage as a separate thing, which is cool. I can grab the rib cage separately. I can do things like up and down here, rotate independently from the hips, which is something very natural that happens in the human uh, locomotion. You know, you have this twist sometimes between the lower and the upper part of the torso. The head obviously is on the it's under the torso instead of because sometimes I want to move this without moving the head, so I decided to put the head under the actual torso group, but not under the rib cage. So I can move the head, torso, and rib cage.
If
Uh,
it wasn't a skeleton, you would probably put the head under the torso, right?
no, because sometimes I really like this movement of up and down.
Ah,
Like
that's cool.
it can give you a feeling of breathing.
Ooh, nice. Yeah.
So if I have the head under the rib cage, it will move the whole thing. Which sometimes
Right.
is sometimes you need that, but most of the time I like to do this to be able to separate rib cage from the head.
So what is the head and the ribcage under again? Like which?
The head is under the torso, which is this folder, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
the rib cage is under the torso, and under the rib cage we have the actual geometry. Okay, and oh, I must say under the torso also you have the actual geometry of the torso, which can be confusing sometimes. It's good to name
so
the
the torso in your case is the spine.
yeah, torso is this
Oh,
head,
the pelvis.
the
Right.
actual the pelvis and the spine, and that's it,
Okay.
right? So in case if I want to distort the spine, I'm gonna have to come back to this layer, which can be complicated sometimes. I'll talk about it, but it's what it is. So inside of ribcage we have the actual geometry, obviously the geo, and then we have the arms, which we can move you know separately. But if we got the ribcage, we move all everything, right? And under the arms, the forearm and the hand, and that's it. The fingers, I decided to not do separate groups for them because it's just beginning to be a little too complicated. So especially if I have like, you know, all this, I didn't do all the bones for the fingers. I keep it a little cartoony. But
yeah, also in terms of performance, it will increase draw call count by exponentially. So it's better to
exactly.
keep hands low,
So
not as a rig.
exactly, in the case of the hands, if I need to do different poses, I will go into the actual geo of the hand and change the pose of the fingers if I need to, and do a different keyframe, right? And that's a little bit complicated as well, because you have to handle the animation of the folders versus the animation of the paint layers. And that is when my big point begins here. The big point that I wanted to make: planning. You really need to plan your animation if you want to work like this. Like with any animation, really. If you work in Maya or traditional or any other system or technique, it's always good to have your a very carefully planned layout of what you're gonna do, because of the complication that this entails, right? To have these two separate ways to animate the folders in one side, and then inside of the folder you have the paint layers. So what I did here is, let me hide the skeleton. I did this little thing, right? Just a sketch, very rough animation. I'm just gonna put an end to it.
Is that one frame by frame?
Let's let's say this is gonna be the end of it. Yeah, and this is all paint layer, right? One single frame, one single layer, sorry, and it's all repeating the same geometry and grab tooling and having fun with it. And also, I use this to set up my timing. I want to know what the speed is going to be of everything. I want to know also if I need to have slowdowns, speed ups, the spacing, all the things that I need to plan. I'll try to do it here in this way, very rough, because it's easy to change. It's all in one layer. If you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. You delete it and then you do it again. It's just one layer. You know, it's so much more easy than handling a whole rig with 1,000 layers under. You know what I mean? So, highly recommended to start off with this, like a very rough sketch, and then move it around with grab tool and plan what you want to do. In this case, he's going to look at something, get scared, and then he ends up in this pose. So, what's the next step that I would do? For the purpose of this live stream, I wanted to talk about the problem with interpolation in Quill. And for that, maybe I'm gonna use just gonna maybe animate the head just to show you what I mean with the interpolation. I animated the Dia de los Muertos piece completely in a step tangents, because I wanted to emulate kind of like a stop motion feel. I want everything to feel like a stop motion, which is really cool. But you don't have to animate like that. Obviously, you can always do everything smooth and use the automatic interpolation that comes with Quill. But what the problem is, and I'm going to show you, maybe I'm just going to turn on the onion scheme for all. And oh yeah, the head has this weird, hang on. I did this thing called fine control.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll explain that later maybe. But for the purpose of that, I'm just going to delete it. I just want to show you what happens with the interpolations in Quill. That doesn't really work the way I would like it to work, you know. So now we have the head, let's say, going from A to B. And I want to see all the in-betweens, and let's change this to linear, right? So the animation goes from A to B in a linear way, constant speed, and that's good, right? interpolates the way you expect it. And if you create if you go in the middle and you do like that, it will do automatic interpolation between A, B, C, right? In a linear fashion. It follows a straight line, which is good sometimes. Sometimes you need that. But what if I want to have this to be an arc, to be a smooth arc, right? So that's when the problem comes in, because I come from the world of Maya animation, and normally when you set up a keyframe here, you get this kind of arc in the in-betweens, right? So you say, okay, well, let's change it to curve, right? The spline tangents. But the problem with this, it doesn't affect the trajectory, and that's what, you know, my biggest confusion when I saw this. It's like, oh, this is gonna alter my trajectory, but it doesn't. All these only works. All these three ways of interpolation tangents, the only thing they do is alter the speed, the spacing, right? So now I have a different spacing. So it's a slowing in into that. It's going faster here, and it's slowing again here, and then slow out, and then slow in this last keyframe. So if we do this, we'll see more clear what's going on, right? Slow in, slow out, slow in, slow out again. But it doesn't really create that curve. If you want that curve, you want to create more keyframes. But the problem is, if there is going to create a slow, it's going to slow down the animation on each one of the keyframes, so that you end up with something that stops and then comes up again and stops and then picks up the speed again and then stops and then gets a speed again and stops, right? So you have these kind of breaks in the animation, right? When you want something kind of continuous. So that's the biggest issue that I have here. So that's the reason I went for stepped as opposed to everything spline, because that way I can control the spacing and the arcs as well the way I want. I guess the other workaround would be to change everything to linear. You select all the keys, you change that to linear, and that kind of gives you a little bit more control over that, and that kind of gives you more a sense of, okay, you can slow in here, and that works a little bit better.
Yeah, one thing I would add to this is that, like, even if keyframes are right next to each other in Quill, and you set the interpolation mode to linear, the interpolation between those two frames, even if you have 24 frames per second set, inside Quill it will still interpolate at a headset frame rate. So, for example, if Daniel animated everything on once and sets the interpolation mode to linear between them, the animation will most likely be perfectly preserved while making it look smoother. I don't know if you tried that, Danielle, and if you had old frames and stuff like that. Of course, it doesn't work, but if you had like pretty much like almost a keyframe on every frame, you can actually set it to linear and it looks fairly nice.
Yeah, the last thing I want to mention before I move on to the next thing is, even though here it's showing you this onion skin and this onion skin, that's not really what's going on. There's more in betweens here, right? Between this and this, there's more in between, and these in betweens are not following a curve; they're following a straight line. And even in between those frames, like between 26, 27, for example, in between those two frames, there's more in betweens, because, like Goro said, we're interpolating with the headset frame rate. In this case, I have 90 hertz, so that's 90 frames per second, or 80 frames per second, depending on if you're in a Rift S or the Quest. Anyway, there's much more in betweens in there between those frames, right? and those are linear, a straight line in between. They're not following a curve. So that's the biggest issue that I have with this system. So that's why I decided, okay, let's go fully traditional and just go into step mode, and that way I will really control the spacing, and everything that you see in the animation is that I put there by hand myself. Okay, and that's what I wanted to mention before. Let's start to build some poses, and I'll take some questions while I keep doing this. So,
And if you guys have questions, make sure to put it into the text chat as usual, and we can read it at the end. If it's like a question in that moment, feel free to just jump in and ask the question.
yeah, in this case, now he's gonna just turn his head a little bit, right? So it's good to have always this thing open, because sometimes you can just do that and do this, and it's awesome to be able to do this because it keeps your pivot in its place and you're just rotating, so which is really cool. So now I have these two. I'm gonna really start to make everything in step mode, because that way I can see the previous pose, right? And I'm just gonna quickly make the biggest keyframes first. For example, here there's a big pose in here. Okay, so the awesome thing about the new features is that you don't have to navigate all the folders. You don't have to do any of this stuff. You just need this guy available and start posing. Just really fun. Just go into this and really have fun with it, like you have a marionette with you. Like you have this. In this case, I want the shoulders to go really up, and it's just such a pleasure to be able to do this, because in Maya or any other program, you have to navigate all these controls and change from translate to rotate constantly. And oh yeah, I'm gonna talk about the IK. Oh well, it's not really IK. It's like a simulation of IK, or fake IK first before going any further with this. But you see how fast and how fun it is to be able to do this without having to navigate anything. I even hide the interface just to get in the zone. Yeah, let's talk about the legs. Well, I think somebody asked this in Facebook, and I should have started to cover it before. But sometimes in your animation you're gonna need some elements. I call this folder IK. It's not really IK. It's just for me to remember what it is. And at the moment it's empty, right? But the good thing about this folder is it's inside the main group of the character, but it's not inside the torso. It's away from the torso. It's isolated from the torso. The torso contains the whole body, right? So what I'm gonna do in this case, I want him to bend his knees, and the foot are gonna be on the ground. So what about I grab the second half of the leg. Let's go to the legs. Thankfully, I named everything. Very important to name everything. And I'm gonna only get the second half of the leg and duplicate it. I'm just gonna call that, just to remember what it is, IK, and just gonna move that into the IK folder. Okay, so I have a duplicate, so I didn't really get rid of this, but I guess you could for this for this shot. I don't really need to switch back and forth. Let's do this like the second half of the leg.
You have like a manual IK/FK switch.
Yeah, you could do a switch if you want.
That's awesome.
Basically by animating the visibility of the layers, with the spans, basically, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Super cool.
So left. Sorry, I renamed it by mistake. The left IK, just to remember what it is. It's not because it's an IK. So, and let's move it up to the folder. Okay, so now I have it more organized. Inside this folder, I have these two. What I can do is maybe hide the legs that I'm not going to use, right? So this leg I'm not going to use. I mean the second half, right, of the leg, the calf and the foot, and same for the right. I'm just going to hide it. I don't need it. So this hiding, as you know, you can animate that by just moving the spans, but that got covered in another video, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. And wait, where are these guys? Oh, I was like, where is it? The whole IK was hidden, so that's why I couldn't see it. Okay, so let's set up the first pose for these two IK legs, which is gonna be just that. Just gonna make a pose here. You can do this manually, or you can just touch, tuk, 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 tuk. Just touching with the grab, it makes a keyframe on each part, right? That's another thing that I realized that you can do. Actually, I was thinking maybe there's a danger that I animate the leg that I hidden, so I'm just gonna lock it just in case. The reason I don't delete it is because what about this character? You wanna reuse it for other scene, or maybe you wanna transform the legs into FK. So I'm not deleting those other parts, but now the legs are separate from the torso, right? So if I go frame 1 and I move this, the legs are on the ground. Let me just make sure that this guy is on the floor. Oh, for some reason he's not properly. Whatever, doesn't matter. I just want this to be a bit more. Yeah, that's all I wanted. Just to make sure that the floor is set up properly, just like there. Okay, so let's go to the other pose that I was doing. He's kneeling, bending his knees. So now we can just go ahead and get these guys down. Up. It's a bit dangerous sometimes to move the. If I hide it, maybe I won't grab it, right? Yes, I grab it. Doesn't matter. You just gotta be careful when you do the navigation. Just do it outside of this circle. So now I'm gonna bend the knees. So I turn off translate, and hoppa. Oh yeah. So we have a problem here. The knee pivot point is not there where it's supposed to be. Okay. So what happens is, what I want to do is that the foot should be the father. Yeah. So
I like that you say father instead of parent.
oh yeah, I don't know why.
Maybe because you became a father.
Maybe. And hang on. So this guy is gonna be the children, right? Okay. Am I doing it right? Yes. So now, okay. So now this guy, the pivot point, it's gonna change it. I'm gonna put it in the heel. This is all a pain in the ass, guys, but it's a one-time setup. That's the good thing. You have to set it up one time, and once it's set up, that's it. So So now,
Yeah, it actually wants to get into the flow, you know, and like it seems complicated first, but you get used to this flow like really fast, right?
so now if I want to move the foot, I just have to turn on translate, move the foot around, and then when I just want to bend the knee, uh, I can pivot the calf from the heel. So let's do the same setup for the other foot. So this guy, I'm gonna put it up, and this guy, I'm gonna put it inside of this folder. So now I'm supposed to be able to move the left foot, translate, and now the leg, this guy, right? Just gotta change the pivot, put it right in the heel, in there. Cool. So now I'm able to move the calf this way. So all this takes a little bit of time to set up, but the good thing is we are able to log the foot on the ground, and it looks much better. So let's keep doing poses. Next time, oh yeah, just gonna make sure everything's step. So yeah, this one, this option, having that on allows you to grab all the keys that you have under that group, right? So that basically is all the keys of your character. Just by dragging, you select all of that. I mean, I think Gordo already covered that part. And I want everything to be stepped. Okay, so let's go there. I want to put this pose maybe. So translate. I normally start with translate. Oops. And then if I need to lock the pivot of the pieces, I will turn off translate if I need to. But for the quick posing, just everything on, translate, rotate. Scale, I never scale anything because unfortunately the scale is only uniform. You cannot do non-uniform scale.
What's cool is if you use if you select the top of the chain, the forearm, the upper arm, and then you scale, it looks like joint stretch, right? Like if you do it
Oh
in
yeah.
moderate. So I use this technique in walk cycles when I wanted the leg to be longer and stuff like that. And in animation, you don't see it at all. Like it just looks normal. So that's like a cool little trick to stretch bones.
And now you're gonna see like, okay, I want these legs, but I have to remember the foot are the fathers. So just get the foot. And in this case, because it's a skeleton, it's okay to separate the bones. I mean, that's completely fine. But if you have a character that doesn't necessarily have to separate the joints, you may have to do this, or go inside of the geometry and deform it, which is another thing that I'm gonna talk about now. Which is why it's so important to plan. Like I said before, if you plan everything, it will make your life easier in order to, because again, you have to deal with the keyframes on the groups, but at the same time you want keyframes on the geometry, right? For example, here we're gonna do some keyframes on the geometry because he needs to have a different expression on his mouth. The spine, I want to distort it a little bit. So one thing that we could do is let's set a keyframe on the things that I want. You can always go to layer here to quickly find the unfortunately it moves, so maybe if you do this you quickly go into whatever you selected, right? And here you have already the geometry available to you. So now I'm just gonna do another keyframe with the the shortcut, right? Left trigger up to duplicate, so that duplicates the geometry, makes a new keyframe there, and then play around with your grab tool. So now we have a different position for that spine, right? Did you get how I got into that? Let's do it again quickly. I have this into layer mode. I turn off translate rotate so I don't accidentally move it. I do a grab, click, one time, and I already have the geo selected for that skull, right? So left trigger, duplicate shortcut. So now I have a new keyframe. I can go ahead and animate this guy's geometry, but unfortunately this also affects the movement of the geo, which I didn't know. I thought this would affect only the transform. And Goro, maybe you have the answer for this.
I have been like answering questions like a maniac in the text chat, so I wasn't listening. What was the thing?
Oh yeah, if you have questions, please can you unmute and then we can talk
Well,
about
the thing is like there's like questions that are unrelated for what you're doing, and I've been
Oh,
just typing the answers, so not to bother you basically. But yeah, was there anything that you had
yeah,
you wanted to explain?
the behavior of this
Yeah.
when you unlock this also affects when you have geometry.
Yeah, when you have selections, yeah, it does.
Yes.
It's really good when you actually model things, or because then you can scale things in place, like selections in place, and so
Okay.
while you create stuff, it can be like super useful. Because you remember, like sometimes when you just want to scale, and then there's no easy way to do it. You have to like,
Well, you have to hold. You have to grab one of the axes and hold the grab, and then do this, right?
but then it moves a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
But if you now turn this off, you can just, even without a gimbal, you can just
yeah.
scale
Ooh.
it in place, which is kind of nice,
Oh, hang on. How?
From
Okay.
from
Okay.
from
Okay.
the pivot you said, of course.
Okay. I
So if
see.
you put the pivot, for example, to the edge of the jaw, it's really cool because then you can just scale from there. Like if you turn on and put it up there,
Yeah.
and now, yeah, exactly. Now you can scale it. So
Yeah.
it's even for frame by frame animation. This stuff can be like super
Okay.
super useful.
So you have to remember to turn that on again. I mean, the reason I turn it off is to be able to find the layer that I want to edit very quickly. You know what I mean?
I do that usually through the selection, right? Like if you go to the tools panel,
Tools panel.
brushes,
Huh?
and
Yep.
then turn on select and all unlock layers.
Uh
Select and
huh.
all. Yeah. The moment you select the stroke, it jumps to that layer automatically.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, that's
But
probably
you have to be careful that you don't forget to turn it off because
yeah,
then
it's
you
a
might.
little
Yeah.
it's a little dangerous.
But this is how I do stuff. Like, for example, this is like really useful when you want to add like more strokes to a specific layer that you rigged already, right? You can just select a piece of that layer, and then you can just add strokes without worrying that you're messing up the hierarchy. If you know what I mean, like you can basically, like if you want to add something to the upper right arm, you select the stroke of the upper right arm, and then you can add like
Yeah,
lines to it, stuff like that.
yeah, you have a yeah,
Without having to go through the hierarchy.
yeah. Whatever system that you have these two ways to do it. Whatever works better for you to find the geometry without having to, because I find a pain to navigate
Yeah,
these all the
I,
time.
I love using the select and all visible unlock layers because all you need to do is just select a piece of the
Yeah,
geometry.
yeah, yeah. Which is really cool. But anyway, let's figure this out. So we have a different expression here, up, something like that. Oh yeah, yes, it's just definitely dangerous because I'm selecting things that I don't want to select. Yeah, no. No, 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 no. I'll just go like that. Because I was selecting the rough sketch and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's dangerous doing this thing, but
What you can do is you just lock the rough sketch. Then you won't be able to select it accidentally.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Boop, there you go.
That's how I usually do it. Like any background and stuff, I just lock everything I don't want to select, and then I turn on the select and all unlock layers, and then it's a really quick workflow.
So let's say if I want this, and I want to create a new keyframe for that layer, I have to remember to duplicate. So now I have a completely new pose. And the way I created those fingers are it's cool because if I do a one single click in the middle, I select the whole thing, and then I can select the other part just by getting that. And because it's a skeleton,
So for the skeleton, you basically used the spherical line tool and the squashed line tool, and just used thick and thin and colorize, right?
yeah, just single strokes.
Yeah.
And thick and thin to kind of give it that bony shape, you know.
That's perfect.
Hey Daniel, with this duplicate keyframes or frame, is there a need to do a bake layer or bake animation for squash and stretch later on? If that makes sense.
Yeah, you could potentially, when you finish animating with transform keys, you could potentially bake the whole thing down and add more flavor to the animation and maybe bend some things over. Or if you want, like this guy, you want to bend it a little bit, so you have to create a new keyframe. Otherwise, you won't see that. But I'm trying not to bend it too much. As much as possible, I'm trying to do the animation as much as possible with what we have. Oh, careful, because I'm animating layers, not groups. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm encouraged to answer a question further. What Daniel is doing is she's adding frame by frame animation and adding the squash and stretch manually. But if you want to, like, for example, animate with keyframes first and then adjust the squash and stretch and stuff like that, like as a second pass to emphasize the animation, in that case, you would animate first with keyframes, then bake the whole thing down, and then go frame by frame to change it. But what Daniel is doing here is he's just on the fly combining two animation methods, where it's like keyframe animation for the body movement, but then he's adding squash and bending frame by frame.
So
Yeah,
now,
right.
so
Yeah,
now,
that's
for
how you
example,
gotta move
I
it.
need a new position for the hands here, for example. So like what Goro told me is really good trick because I can just go into the layer of the hand just by clicking with the right trigger once, and immediately I jump into that layer, and I'm ready to create a new keyframe there. Right? You see that? So I can just do the new keyframe, and I'm free now to create a new pose for the hand. So yeah, that's a really good workflow. I didn't think about that system, so it's much better than what I was doing. Uh, and
It's really fun. What
obviously,
I'm currently experimenting with is like I'm doing like a really, really rough sketch, like not even like a skeleton this detailed, and not even as detailed as your line drawing. It's just like a puppet, right? And then I want to try to animate it first, and then I do the line drawings after that, adding it to those layers. And then I make the puppet rig basically invisible by filling it with a background color. That's something I'm trying right now, and for that workflow, it's like really useful to have the select in all unlocked layers, because in order to just add strokes, like because it's all animated via keyframes, all you need to do is just create a new layer in those folders, and then you select one limb, and then create a new layer, and then you can just do the line drawings and adjustments on top of that while preserving the entire animation. It's pretty cool.
Ooh, I don't think I got all of that. Sorry, I was concentrating.
But yeah, no,
you should do a live stream with that.
It's similar to what you're doing already. It's just like I just use a much simpler rig, and then I do the detailed drawing afterwards. After I did the animation, I'm just trying like different workflows.
I have a bit of a basic question. So since you're like squashing and pulling and doing all that stuff right now, like really manipulating the rig, if your character in like the last shot has to go back to kind of being normal, or like you're having like his regular like anatomy, how would you go about doing that? Would you copy your first frame?
Yeah. Yeah, you go back to the geo on the first frame, and you can also have a special layer just dedicated to a library of untouched geometry.
Okay.
Yeah, and then use that layer to select and paste, copy paste, and then put it back. That could be another way to do it.
Okay.
And there's a functionality called copy selection to current frame.
Yeah,
and that's what we use.
Oh,
And it doesn't matter on which layer the selected strokes are. It will just copy it into the current frame. And that's why, like what Danielle said, like having like a static library of like an untouched character can be useful, because then you can just paste it in there. But if you need the position to match, well, that's the good thing about the rig. If you want the position to match with the first frame, you can just copy paste, and regardless if you rotate the head later on, the head will be in the right position because it was animated via keyframes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So,
you might want to save. Kurt says you might want to save, Daniel.
So, excuse me. Before saving, I have done something. I have done something wrong, and I don't know what it is. I've done something wrong. For some reason, these arms aren't there. They're not supposed to be there. And I don't know why. And that's the danger sometimes with this.
Can you select the upper arm and see and go to that layer?
I think I messed up. I think I didn't set up a keyframe on the first frame. That's the biggest issue here. Okay. So yeah, I put, yeah, that's the mistake. I did this without having a keyframe on the first frame. So
classic.
That's a problem. So let's keep that position on the first frame for all these controls.
Amory is asking if your spine is only one stroke.
Yeah. Well, two, sorry. Two for the, there's another one for the light, the blue light.
Oh, you mean, what do you mean? There's like, just duplicated and shifted a little bit for lighting?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's just one stroke.
Nice.
Anyway, I think I have a keyframe of all the controls here, maybe? Do I? I think. That's why it would be so useful to have a button to select this, press, and then you know for sure you have a keyframing on all the controls. That would be very reassuring. But see, that's I have something there that I don't want. Okay. Okay, he goes there.
Do you want to save now?
Oh yeah, let's save now. Well, it doesn't matter because I just want to use this as a way to explain. This should not be there. And for some reason the torso is kind of weird. But it doesn't matter, okay. have to move on. Sorry, I get obsessed with stupid things. Okay.
Time check. We have 13 minutes to 11 o'clock.
Okay, we have this keyframe, and then he's gonna go into the anticipation. So we're gonna need a keyframe here on all the controls before he goes into anticipation, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about transitions. So let's do this trick again. Just select, touch a little bit each one of them, each one of the controls. Each one of the parts of the body. I touch them with the grab tool, and that kind of assures me that I have a keyframe on all the controls, even though I don't want movements, I don't want change. Okay.
Not grab tool, right? You're just grabbing it just with the trigger.
Grab trigger, sorry. Trigger button on the control. So that way I select the thing, and I have a keyframe on each one of them. You can also go and do this and move. And set a keyframe this way, but it's a little faster this way. So now we have a transition to this pose. And for this, I'm just gonna move the rough just temporarily. I'm just gonna move it on the side so it doesn't bother me. And let's go back to the transition. And here you should supposed to have a keyframe on all the controls. So just in case, I'm gonna do it again. Keyframe on all the controls. And let me change the spine. I have a keyframe on the spine, right? No, let's do a new keyframe on the spine. Bend it. That's good. Let's go back to just to explain how to get a good transition. Okay, so we go from here to there. With these buttons right here, you can switch, jump from keyframe to keyframe. So let's go to the main father, this guy, and do a big selection of these two things. Oh, there's no keyframes on everything, huh? So you can see here if you have keyframes on all the controls or not. That's kind of a little annoying. Just want to make sure I have keyframes on all the controls, just in case. Okay. So I want to have everything selected. Yes, all the keys selected. That's good. And I'm gonna change it to linear just to see what's the transition between these two things. Okay, that's good. But I don't want that because it's very linear. Some things are going to be linear and some things are going to be... So for example, the head, I want to change a little bit how it transitions from there to the other thing. And I in the sketch, I did a little bit of a squash. So let's do a little bit of that using the guide. Very quickly, I'm gonna show what I did on the other Muertos. I did a lot of this guide thingy, which is similar to what Amaury was talking about in his stream with the little dot technique, which I was really impressed by. I was, oh, this is kind of what I do, a little different.
It's funny. I just posted the Goodbye Mr. Octopus making of into the text chat at the same time when you said that.
And this is not a really good example because it's not a huge. There's not a lot of distance traveling, but anyway, let's imagine we have a big distance here to travel, and we want this to have this particular curve of animation, right? And you can even play with this and kind of select it all, and you know, oh, yeah, that's the danger of this. But anyway, you know what I mean. Just really make sure that this is like a 3D space curve. And I'm gonna do a similar thing later for the hands, but let's take a look at just the head thing. Let's say I want to have this really fun curve here, right? So I'm just gonna animate the head there, and then basically I'm going frame by frame, just like a stop motion, frame by frame, and following that route, that path, and kind of taking in account the spacing as well. So maybe I want to slow out of it and then maybe slow and go faster here.
That's what I love about this versus stop motion, right? In stop motion, you have to do everything in one go, but here you can like go back and adjust.
Yeah, super fun. And I did this frame by frame. So same I can do for the rest of the things. If I want to avoid the linear transitions and make it more fun, for example, these arms I'm gonna drag a little bit maybe on the next frame, so they drag a little bit. You see that? So I need to continue that maybe frame by frame. So I go frame by frame and I just edit that animation, and some of the interpolation that it's already been done for me, I use it, right? So I don't edit everything, but some of the stuff I do edit. So here, and because I'm keeping the pivot, and I switch off the translate, I'm keeping the pivot for that. Especially on the fast movements, this looks really good. The dragging of the limbs, right, of the different parts of the joints. And I'm gonna do the same on the other arm.
So Daniel, you bring all the experience in terms of spacing and stuff like that. You know how to slow things down. Have you ever thought about doing just a rhythm sketch without like a full body sketch? What you have on the left side, that you basically just use a sphere and do kind of just like a rhythm sketch with transform keyframes, and then you just animate the character directly to that beat, or like. Because I feel like like you have all the years of experience to be able to the speed before it actually happens, right? You know how to ease things out and ease things in, and just for the people that are new to animation, it might be helpful to actually use the rhythm sketch first. I'm just curious if you ever do that.
What's a rhythm sketch actually?
So
You mean like a ball and kind of?
Yeah, I just puppeteer the rhythm. So, for example, if you have, like a character boxing, boom, 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 then I would animate it like boom, boom, boom with a ball that moves, just so I can separate the timing from the rig. That I don't have to worry about that anymore, because like it's sometimes difficult to, figure out the timing by just posing and spacing the keyframes out. Like sometimes it's useful for me to have like either an anim brush sketch or just an animated transform keyframed ball that defines the rhythm, because animation is so much about rhythm, right? And all what you're doing is
that's what I try to do with this guy. That's what I try to do with this guy. Establish a rhythm and timing and everything, but not just timing and rhythm. Also the poses, the silhouette, all combined together. because if I only do rhythm and I don't think of anything else than rhythm, I feel like it's a little too. I don't want to separate all the different parts so much. I think I want to also. I love doing this because it's so easy to do in Quill. You just sketch it. Pa, 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 pa.
Yeah, no. I get why you do this, but I think the difference is that you bring all that experience, right? So you can like do the drawing and the timing at the same time. You know, like you can. I see like the rhythm sketch maybe as a step before even you do that sketch on the left. You know, that
Oh,
you
okay.
can then base your rough drawing to that ball rhythm, because then you can separate the overall rhythm and then you can just focus on the posing. You know what I mean? That way you can like add like a like that works for me really well, because I like to do a rhythm sketch first, because then I don't have to worry about timing and posing at the same time. Then when I do the rough sketch or even use the final rig already,
Yeah.
I can separate like a puppeteer timing from like I don't have to figure the timing out in my head. I can actually feel the rhythm by moving that ball.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
then right like that's what I'm trying to do right now. Just trying to optimize my workflow, because you know I could figure out the timing through a sketch like you did, but even before that, to me, when you puppeteer something, you can feel the rhythm. And I feel like that's always a little bit different from knowing the rhythm, you know, because you won't see the rhythm until you actually animated it. While when you puppeteer a rhythm, you have an instantaneous result, right? Where you can see like, oh, this looks not cartoony enough, so let me move it more cartoony and stuff like that. And you can do like multiple passes really quickly by animating just a simple object, and then you can use that as a reference, timing reference for your initial rough drawing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's very personal. I think every animator is gonna have their own system that works and that feels right for you, for your personal technique and your workflow.
Yeah,
Um, to me, puppeteering is just not precise enough. I'm very particular about my spacing and
yeah.
my not just the spacing, the silhouette and the shape and exactly the pose that I want. Is very. I'm very particular about that, and I decide to really do it this way because I feel like I control the spacing. I come from a traditional hand drawn background as well, so I have much more of uh, how you say habit of planning.
Yeah,
I have the habit to plan my spacing very carefully as well. So
totally. No, it's definitely like I think that's where it shows your craft and the amount of experience you have, because you make it look easy, but there's so much more to it than what we're seeing right now. What happens in your head while you're doing it.
yeah, hopefully that's why I do the live streams. Hopefully I can in the live stream show what's my process, thinking process. So and for people who do come from a traditional background, they will see this and hopefully inspire them to use Quill more and try this kind of techniques because it's so much fun once you get into it. Look, I mean, this is great. I can do this guide in 3 dimensions. This guide is something that I would do in 2D in Maya, right?
Yeah,
But in here we are not attached to the 2D. We can do this guide also in a 3 dimensional fashion, right? So
super cool.
that's really awesome because I can use that as my guide for the in-betweens. So all the stuff that's gonna go here, and sometimes I would do this as well, kind of an indication of more or less the spacing that I want, even though it's not exactly the number of frames, but I mean, it's not as precise as I would like it to be. But for example, let's keep going here. I want to make sure that I don't have this. Okay. So now the hips are gonna go up. It's great. It's gonna keep going like that. And the head, I'm gonna use this guide eventually. But first, before animating the head, I want to make sure that I have a right pose for the body, right? and the spine should be already on its position. So let's find the spine. Let's find the spine.
Are you using the IK leg for this?
I'm gonna
Or
yeah the legs are already locked in the ground. You see.
Oh yeah, nice. Okay.
So what's gonna happen here is this guy is gonna come earlier. So this, I know, hang on, that's the hand. I want the spine. There you go. So the spine is gonna come earlier here. Yes, that's good. So we're gonna keep animating this guy and just kind of playing around with where the torso is gonna go. Hang on, just want to make sure that I don't have, okay, here. And the arms are gonna go early into this position. So maybe I'm just gonna grab the whole arm and change the timing a little bit too.
Do you want to save?
Oh yeah, sure, why not?
And also,
How are we doing in time?
It's 11:03. But
Okay.
if you still have a bit of time, you can.
Yeah, I think I covered most of the stuff I wanted to talk about.
Nice.
But if anybody has a specific question, that would be really great.
No questions so far.
We're gonna move the hand geo for the left, and the hand geo for the right is gonna come earlier as well.
Just a really quick question, Daniel.
Yeah.
So these, just to clarify, all of these in-betweens are baked?
No, this is all. At the moment, I'm using linear transition between these two, but I'm using the linear transition and I'm modifying the what the linear automatically gives me. Does that make sense?
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So between this and this is linear transition, right? Well, on the torso, for example. But I took the torso and I'm editing manually that to make sure the spacing is what I want. For example, in the first frame before going up, I want the torso to be down, closer to. There's a little bit of a problem as well, and I wish this could be fixed someday in Quill. We don't see the onion skinning when we animate in transform keyframes. We see these boxes, and that could be a little troublesome sometimes, and that's also another way to use the guide thing, just to use it as a if you go to the guide, you can have your free drawing here. So I use the guide as well as a way to do onion skinning because I don't have it right now. So maybe I'm going to show you that. So this is the frame number 28. So frame number 29, I want the hips to be a little bit closer to 28. So I just have to go to 29 and use the grab button and move the hips a little bit closer to that, so that I'm controlling the spacing a bit more, you know what I mean? And now here I'm gonna go fast, and from here to here is pretty fast. From 32 it's a little too slow. I'm just gonna move it up and then slow it down in the next pose. Actually, I want this to be the final pose, so sometimes it's good to have. This is the final pose that I want, so I'm gonna draw on top of that with the guide.
Also, to elaborate on your question again, he is using right now. He's modifying the transform keyframes, but he was also mixing it with frame by frame animation, which is why you see in his parent groups you see the frame by frame frames with holds, animation holds. If this was all baked, you would just see like an entire layer just filled with frame by frame keyframes.
Cool, thank you.
So the foot, if I want the foot to be locked on the ground, I can just go into the layer, in the group, and you can just copy that keyframe for the foot, go next frame and paste it, so that foot will be on the ground from 28 to 29. So same thing here, I can just copy that, paste it, and we have that foot on the ground. So that gives you a sense of really, the ground is really solid and the foot is really, in the ground. And then from this part on, he's gonna already lift up, so I'm just gonna edit that manually. And because it's a skeleton, there's a little bit of a freedom that I can have with the joints being all crazy, but it depends on your character as well. Here, notice the mistake that I did. I edited the keyframe on 30, but I didn't do a keyframe on 29. So now the femur is all going crazy because it still has the keyframe on that I have in 28. So here I have to edit 29 manually. So for that, maybe I'll turn off translate and just go that, and then just find the good where the two legs are meeting, and then just make sure that it feels good. So that way you can kind of have like an IK, but it's not really an IK. It's just a fake thing. But at least basically what you're doing is separating things from the hierarchy, right? So here I'm gonna go into having that as a reference, And this is the way I like to work, even in Maya. I like to work from keyframe to keyframe and figure out the transition on each one of those, right? So now I can work on the arms. And if I want to do something really fancy, I can always use the guide to figure out where the hand was before. So here the arm is here on the next frame. Okay, good. Okay, that's good. I can use that as my onion skinning, even though I don't have it right now. But it's good enough, I think. I like to have this guide here. It's pretty useful. And then frame by frame, just like a traditional stop motion, just go frame by frame and add in your in-betweens until you get to the big important pose, which is this one. Let's do the same for this the other arm here. It's doing some weird stuff here. So here we can just flip the hand here, pop, something like that maybe. And again, we can just go into the guide if we, the guide, you don't really have to use it all the time, but for certain things it's cool to use it. For example, here I want this hand to do a nice arc, so it's gonna something like that. So just use this, and it's just so cool because you don't even have to turn on the interface at some point.
It's like supercharged stop motion.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Without gravity.
Oh yeah, you don't have gravity. You don't have real world restrictions. Oops, is that the way it was? Okay, whatever. So it's really fast, this curve. So it's so fast that maybe I'm considering changing a little bit the geometry to give that a smear frame feeling. So maybe I can just go quickly. Selection. Oh, it's already activated. So I can go here. And I'm on the geo. I can do a keyframe. And go here and do this kind of really fun kind of smear frame. I want that maybe. Now I'm really combining the two things, right? Let's get rid of that just in case. And I'm gonna go back to normal, the way I was animating before, just by using the grab button. And this is so cool. I can do this kind of changes on my animation. And then here I want the hand to go back to normal, so I'm gonna have to just select that again. And I should have saved the keyframe there. I made a mistake in there. Yeah, I should have saved the keyframe, but it doesn't matter. We can just copy maybe where here the hand is not deformed, so I can just select. I only want the hand in this case, so I'm just gonna turn that off. Select that. Now let's delete this first, sorry. Let's go to here. This is the clean hand. Select it and then go to this other frame 33 and use this button right here. Copy. So that gives me the clean hand again. So I can just let's take a look at this transition. Okay, so I think I need one more keyframe there. Here, I need one more keyframe on the hand geo. And in this case, I'm just gonna mess it up. I don't care because it's so fast. Yeah, I'm going really quickly. But anyway, you know the process. You see what I mean. All right, so I think that's all I wanted to cover, basically. So
Super awesome.
So once you have, oh yeah, and the other thing that I will do now is once I have this transition figured out, select everything here and make it stepped. And the reason why is because I want. Oh, what happened?
And hide the guides.
Oh, something happened. Hang on. When I transform it to step, what happened? Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, you see, it's a little too smooth, but actually it's okay. Actually, you can work like that without changing to step. The problem with changing to step now is that the in-betweens that I did use, the in-betweens that I did take advantage of, for example here, all this stuff here between this and this is automatically in between, right? So all of that stuff I will have to do a keyframe on each frame if I wanted to switch to step. So switching to step, what it gives you is this kind of more stop motion feel where there's no interpolation between. But you can also work this way where some parts are interpolated by hand and some parts are interpolated smoothly by Quill. The problem
It may be valuable to mention that we've seen it only in step motion anyway, because we're seeing it at 24 frames per second versus you see it smooth, right? Because you you see it at a higher frame rate.
Oh yeah, you don't see it. Yeah, yeah sorry.
So we see it, and for us it looks exactly the same.
Yes, you're right. Oh, I forgot to do the head. Anyways. Yeah, sorry. The linear tangents, what's gonna do is gonna make it really smooth, and it's gonna be different from the parts where you post manually each frame, right? So that could be a problem or not. I mean, you just have to test it out and see if it works. Like for example, the streamer that I did with the whale, that scene, I combined both hand animated keyframes, I mean in betweens, and automatic in betweens. So I have a combination of both things. And sometimes it can work. You know, it's not that you cannot do it. It definitely saves time because obviously some of the automatic interpolations are good and you wanna still use them. And this potentially you can bake it so you can do even more deformations with grab tool. But you get the idea. So the guide is basically really useful to just work on those paths and all that stuff. All right, I don't think I have time to do much more than that. But I hope
Turned out super nice.
I hope this was informative, and this is the way I animated the Dia de los Muertos scene, in case somebody was wondering. So this is it ends up being a mess of keyframes combine
Can
the
you-
transform and the paint.
Can you set up a looping work area real quick and then just play the animation back? You already have it. Yeah. And then hide the menu. Boom.
Yeah, it's not even. Yeah, no, it's not good.
But you don't have the landing, right? So
But
I think you.
but you see the process more or less, right?
Well, yeah. If you haven't already, make sure to check out Danielle's Dia de los Muertos thing. It's pretty amazing. And make sure to post the link in the text chat as well for that.
All right.
So much.
Thank you, everybody.
I come from a 2D background too, so this was very helpful.
Thank you so much.
This was super awesome, Danielle. Thank
right.
you.
I'm gonna stop
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you, everybody, for attending and taking questions. I'll see you on the
Thank you,
next
Daniel.
stream. Bye bye. I
See ya.
sound like a
See you next
YouTuber already. Bye.